Alright, gentlemen, so we can't defeat the Soviets militarily. So what I'm proposing today is that we defeat them economically. That's ridiculous. That would take forever. Not if we put together a plan to make them bankrupt themselves quickly. Gentlemen, I'm proposing that we fake going to the moon. Yeah, right, like anybody would believe that. You haven't even heard my plan yet, Jerry. What I'm proposing is that we fake about 10 missions. Maybe we just go up into space a few times, circle around the moon once or twice, and then we fake land it on the moon. We get Hollywood's best special effects people. Genius, maybe we even have a disaster mission where the astronauts get lost in space, you know, so no one thinks that we're perfect. That's genius, Jerry. See, I was just planning on blowing up the first one completely. Boom, right? But a disaster, that, maybe we make it the 13th mission, right? Because the number 13? Well, of course, why would we pick literally any other number? But what if the Soviets don't take the bait? Excellent question, Jerry. Well, my name actually isn't Jerry.
We all may enjoy a pretty good laugh whenever we hear someone try to explain the intricate details of whatever conspiracy theory they believe in. But today, instead of just mocking and laughing at conspiracy theories, okay, maybe a little laughing, I thought we might take a different approach and try to explain why people might want to believe in them. What are the psychological reasons behind some of our all-time favorite conspiracies? First of all, who believes in conspiracy theories? A recent study found several factors which can predict whether someone will believe in conspiracy theories. Education level. Perhaps predictively, people with a higher education level are far less likely to believe in conspiracy theories. This is because the more education you have, the less likely you are to accept simple solutions to complex problems. Feelings of control. People who feel more in control of themselves and their social environment feel far less susceptible to outside manipulation. Perception of social class. People who perceive themselves to be in a higher social class, regardless of the objective reality of their social class, are less likely to believe in conspiracies. Belief in conspiracy theories. This study, as well as an older study, showed that if you believe in one conspiracy, you are far more likely to believe in many others. It's pretty rare to find someone who only believes in one. It may seem pretty intuitive that belief in conspiracy theories is a predictor of whether or not you believe in more conspiracy theories. However, when presented with a list of 10 conspiracy theories, it was pretty rare to find someone who believed in only half. It was either all or nothing. Believing in one usually predicted that you would believe in all of them. We'll revisit these themes several times as we try to explain why people almost want to believe in conspiracies. Nice segue. Let's start this off by talking about aliens. People believe in aliens for much the same reason they believe in ghosts. I suppose I should preface this by saying that there's an obvious difference between believing that aliens exist somewhere out there in the cosmos and aliens coming to Earth to abduct and probe people. Or that believing aliens came to Earth in the distant past in order to help us build the pyramids and part the Red Sea and whatever else. People believe in aliens, ghosts, and for that matter angels and demons for pretty much the same reason. They want there to be more to life. If this is it, it's just us floating around on this planet with billions of miles of nothingness in every direction, we live, we die, and that's it, that's kinda sad, really. Now, angels, demons, and ghosts are all paranormal or supernatural, while aliens are natural, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. It's easy to dismiss believing in angels and ghosts as an argument of faith, whereas aliens are physical and therefore more real and scientific. There is no conspiracy when it comes to believing in ghosts, because nobody who believes in those believes that there is a government cover-up regarding their existence. When it comes to natural beings like aliens or Bigfoot, there should be an abundance of physical evidence pointing to their existence, but there isn't, at least none that mainstream science recognizes, so oftentimes belief in aliens is coupled with a belief in a government cover-up. The focus of many conspiracy theories is the government, or perhaps a power above the government, like the Illuminati or the New World Order or lizard people. While all of those might sound funny, none of those were jokes I came up with. I'm just not that funny. Back to aliens. It's often thought that the government knows about the existence of aliens or are perhaps working with them, but keeping them a secret. A lot of the focus of this belief is aimed at Area 51 and the supposed UFO crash in Roswell. I don't want to spend an abundance of time debunking every theory that I talk about today, but the alien crash conspiracy gets under my skin for two reasons. First, whenever we lose some sort of military hardware, be it an airplane or a submarine, and we find out that China has it, we demand its immediate return, especially of the crew or their bodies. This is often huge international news because while it is rare, it does happen. So it stands to reason that if there was a UFO crash in the middle of New Mexico, they would send a search and rescue team for it. They wouldn't just let the debris be gathered up and the bodies be experimented on for decades. Second, Area 51 is not a secret and it hasn't been for decades. There are always eyes watching it, whether it's the McCarran Airport shuttle or people with their cameras and telescopes pointed towards the sky. All eyes are on Area 51. If I was the government, this is the last place I would keep any alien remains or test anything I wanted to keep secret. Perhaps the existence of Area 51 is the cover-up, in order to keep all the conspiracy theorists' eyes pointed towards that, while they really do all of their really secret testing on some remote Pacific or Indian Ocean island, like Diego Garcia. So why do people believe that the government or the Illuminati are keeping people in the dark? Or perhaps a better question is, why do people want to believe that the government is keeping them in the dark? I used to joke with conspiracy theorists and say that the version of reality that they live in is much scarier than the version that I and the rest of us do. But then I really thought about it. With government control, the world is safer. Let's take a look at another big example. 9/11. There are many conflicting conspiracy theories when it comes to 9/11, and you've probably heard many of them. As I said before, believing in one will often predict that you believe in all of them, even if they conflict and can't possibly all have happened. Let's go through a very few. Number 1, the government knew the attack was coming but let it happen anyway. Number 2, the hijackers were CIA operatives. Number 3, they landed the planes shortly after takeoff and disembarked or killed all of the passengers if they ever existed, loaded the planes with explosives and flew those into the buildings. Number 4, the Pentagon was hit with a cruise missile, not an airplane. Number 5, the planes were holograms and the buildings were brought down using controlled demolitions. Again, I swear I didn't make any of these up. They obviously can't all be simultaneously true. However, many people believe in all or most of these despite the contradictions. Why? Because believing that the government did it means that it's all part of a plan. It means that this horrible attack on civilians wasn't carried out by a dozen or so terrorists with minimal supplies and training, but instead it was a well-organized government operation, which means that the government is more powerful than it really is. Reality is chaotic and sometimes evil people do evil things, and that is unsettling for some people, so much so that they would rather believe that the all-powerful government performed this attack on itself in order to justify invading some country or passing some legislation, because that means there was a plan, and the world is safer when there's a plan. These plans are quite convoluted, however, and often include what's called the conjunction fallacy. In order to explain the conjunction fallacy, try to answer this question. I didn't make a video last week. Which explanation is more likely? A, I was feeling a bit overworked and didn't feel like I could put out a well-rounded video that I would be proud of. Or B, I was lazy. Let's say that the odds of any one of these things occurring is 90%. That means that the odds of B being the explanation is 90%. The odds of A occurring is 81% because it requires two things to occur simultaneously. A is the correct answer, but B is mathematically more likely. So when it comes to the attacks on 9/11, which is more likely? A, a group of terrorists did it, or B, the government orchestrated the attack on itself using holograms and demolitions in order to justify invading the Middle East and passing the Patriot Act? I'm not going to do the math on that one, but it should be pretty obvious. Whenever there is more than one modifier, the simplest one is more likely. A government attacking its own people in order to justify invading another country is not a new thing. It's called a false flag, and it comes from the Navy when a ship would fly obviously not its flag, and attack its own people. A notable true example of this happening is when Hitler had his army dress up in Polish uniforms and attack concentration camp prisoners dressed in German uniforms. They used this fake incident to justify invading Poland in 1939. That same year, the Russian army attacked one of their own cities on the Finnish border, blamed it on Finland, and likewise invaded. But the United States has done it, sort of, as well. In 1898, the USS Maine was anchored in Havana Harbor, Cuba, and blew up. We blamed the explosion on Spain and used it as justification to start the Spanish-American War. The rallying cry for that war was "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain." That was the war when we took over Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines, and liberated Cuba. It turns out that the Spanish totally didn't cause the explosion. There are two theories on what actually happened. One is that it was a false flag attack and we did it to ourselves. The other is that it was just an accident, since it was an ammunition storage room that exploded. However, people today still think that the United States performs false flag attacks on itself, like at the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting.
And I'll be honest with you, I see a lot of evidence of false flag at Sandy Hook, because in my experience, when they do false flags, why not kill some kids? I mean, they have more fun. I mean, they enjoy their work. I see false flag all over the place, not just at Sandy Hook.
The Aurora movie theater shooting.
We know they stage stuff. They've staged it before. And again, you look at the Aurora shooting, that was totally staged. I don't have an hour to go over the evidence. Most of you are aware of it all, but it was incredible how staged that was. The Unabomber was CIA. James Holmes worked above CIA in a super black DARPA program. Super black.
And the Boston Marathon bombing.
The Boston bombing, that was a total drill on record, with the older brother, Tamerlan, being a CIA asset on record. I mean, it was in major British and German news.
Why would the US do these attacks to itself?
I just know this. They know that guns have made violent crime go down 49%. They know that. This is all happening right now. Why do they want our guns so bad? They want our guns so that we can be politically dominated.
Ah yes, to pass gun control legislation. You only need to look at the past decade to see that that's objectively not true. Since 2002, more guns have been sold every year than the previous year. After every one of these shootings, they don't pass gun control. But what does happen? There's a spike in gun sales. Why isn't that the conspiracy? That gun manufacturers are carrying out these attacks in order to sell more guns. There's at least data to support that theory, but no, instead of the truth, which is that evil people sometimes do evil things, sometimes with guns, it's much safer to believe that the government did it on purpose, or that it was completely faked and nobody ever actually died in the first place. The world is safer and more controlled if the government has much more power than it really does. Which brings us to our next theory. The government possesses chemicals which can alter our health and behavior. Before we leave Alex Jones, let's give him one more chance to tell us his truth.
By the way, they didn't just test it. They sprayed them with gay bombs. If you're a new listener, just type in Pentagon tested gay bomb on Iraq. They didn't consider using it. They've used it on our troops. Now, there it is, the gay bomb. Look it up for yourself. I mean, this is what do you think tap water is? It's a gay bomb, baby.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap.
Well then, that's an interesting theory. Why would the government want to do that? Before I answer that, let's talk about some of the other related theories involving chemicals used by the government, like how GMOs are causing people to get obese or sick, like how vaccines cause autism or other mental illnesses, or how vaccines are completely useless and just used by Big Pharma to get your money, or how they're spraying chemicals into the air using airliners in order to do all sorts of things like mind control or make you sick, or I guess turn you gay? What do all of these have in common? They put the blame on someone else. Overeating isn't the reason you're obese. Your genetics or poor prenatal health, or perhaps bad parenting, aren't the reason your child has a learning disability or ADHD or autism or some other mental disorder. You aren't gay because that's just your natural orientation. No, it's because of the government or Monsanto and their chemicals. People like to draw a correlation between things in order to find causation. Correlation is not causation. Since vaccines are given to children around the same age that they also start to develop language and social skills, if they appear to be a little behind their peers, it's not because your child is a little behind. It must be the vaccine. Obesity and allergies weren't always so prevalent, but they got worse around the same time that GMOs came about. So it must be the GMOs. Nobody wants to think, maybe it's my fault. No, they want to put it on someone else. In the same vein of thought, there are a number of conspiracy theories in the African American community that blame the government for many things that seem to affect their community more than others. Like the fact that KFC causes sterility in black men, or that HIV and AIDS were manufactured by the government in order to control the black population, or that cocaine was invented specifically to destroy and impoverish the black community. These may sound a bit ridiculous, but these things do seem to affect the black community much more than they affect others. But instead of looking inwards and trying to figure out why these things happen, a conspiracy is formed in order to shift blame to someone else, usually the government. This is also complicated by the fact that the government has actually intentionally infected black men with STDs in order to study their effect, like in the Tuskegee experiment. So coming up with a conspiracy theory in order to explain something that you don't think other people see is oftentimes a badge of honor. A way of saying, I'm smart, I'm awake, don't you see what's happening to you? If you see a conspiracy that others don't, you often feel superior and feel a duty to educate others. My eyes are open. Let me help you open yours. Usually these conspiracy theories have something to do with a sinister motive of someone else, usually the government. Let's take a look at an example from about a decade ago, the invasion of Iraq. The American people were told several reasons why we should invade. Weapons of mass destruction, use of chemical weapons, which undoubtedly did happen by the way, sponsorship of terrorism, involvement in 9/11, and many others. Some of them turned out to be true, many of them turned out to be false. Many Americans felt deceived by this, so they tried to come up with some other reason why the government wanted to invade. And the obvious one was blood for oil. Telling people that the government is lying to them and they don't actually want to invade because of this, this, and this, but they actually want to invade because of this one simple obvious reason, oil, makes you seem smarter and superior to all of the other sheep with their eyes closed. And here's where I want to talk about the importance of hindsight. Iraq is over, so it's time to look back and see if that conspiracy was actually true. No, it wasn't. Turns out that WMDs were false, involvement in 9/11 was false, but also blood for oil was false. Oil prices went up, not down. We didn't get any oil from that invasion. I was deployed to Iraq in 2009 and I ran convoy security from southern Iraq to the Kuwaiti border. We always took tanker trucks full of oil into Iraq and empty ones out. I know it's easy to think that we get a lot of oil from the Middle East, but that's simply not true. We get most of our oil domestically, but of the foreign oil we do get, far and away the biggest exporter to the United States is Canada, followed by Mexico. The third and fourth spots flip back and forth year to year, but historically, third is Venezuela and fourth is Saudi Arabia. It fluctuates, but Saudi Arabia rarely breaks double digits of the percentage of foreign oil we get. It just costs way too much to ship oil from that side of the world to here. I've never really understood why politicians always talk about how we need to get off of our dependence of Middle Eastern oil, when the truth is we get so little we'd probably be fine without it. But sorry, tangent. You have to go back and look at a former theory and ask yourself, did this turn out to be true? In the case of Iraq, it's over and done with, so we can do that. But there are other theories that are currently in process that we can't, like global warming. Climate change deniers believe that global warming is a hoax in order to hold back American industry so that foreign powers can get ahead, or so that green industries and charities can suck up more profits. They think that scientists are in cahoots with green industry and put out bogus studies in order to help pass more regulation on American industries. This is a conspiracy theory that's happening right now. The problem is that if conspiracy theorists are wrong on this one, we may not get a chance to use hindsight later on. The people who deny climate change and buy into this conspiracy theory are usually the people who work in an industry that has been implicated as a contributor to global warming, and therefore have a lot to lose to regulation. Their jobs and livelihood are at stake, so it's understandable that they might get a little defensive. They are more likely to see a sinister conspiracy theory behind this, and you need to open your eyes to it. But then there is the fifth category of conspiracies. I have no idea. These are the conspiracy theories that I spent hours trying to figure out why people would believe in them, and I just can't come up with anything. If you can, then by all means, please leave them in the comments. But no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to come up with any sort of comfort in believing them, any passage of blame, any superiority, or any additional meaning to life. For example, believing the Earth is flat. Who gains from deceiving the public into believing that the world is round? Globe manufacturers? Why does this even matter? Do people who believe that the Earth is flat feel smarter than everyone else? Because I can tell you right now, it's usually the opposite effect. Or the phantom time hypothesis, which proposes that the years 614 to 911 AD never actually happened. They suppose that the Holy Roman Emperor wanted his reign to start in the year 1000 AD, so he just made up a bunch of years. And everything that happened during that time, including artifacts from those years, were just made up. Yeah, I've got nothing. I just don't see who gains from that conspiracy or what comfort believers in that theory get. Perhaps it's an I'm smart and you're not sort of thing, but there's no sinister motives to uncover here. Which brings us full circle back to the moon landing. If you believe that the moon landing was fabricated, then you must believe that the conversation that took place at the very beginning of this video must have happened. Because with 50 years of hindsight, the idea that it was to bankrupt the Soviet Union has obviously been disproven. Yet some people still think that's the case and that going to the moon is impossible. Not only that we can't go to the moon, but that we can't go to space at all. Who gains from faking going to space or to the moon? If you believe that the government fakes it in order to make itself seem more powerful than it really is, while I have no data to support this, I'm pretty sure that it would be easier to just go to the moon than it would be to fake it. So the next time you hear of a new conspiracy theory, I hope you have a better understanding of why some people might want to buy into it. And if you think the moon landing is fake, go tell that to Buzz Aldrin.
And a liar and a thief.
Because hopefully now, you know better. Hey, look at this fancy new outro card. I'm gonna have some new Patreon rewards coming out on Tuesday, so be on the lookout for that. But if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, make sure to give that like button a click. If you'd like to see more from me, I put out new videos every weekend, so make sure to conspire against that subscribe button. But in the meantime, if you'd like to watch one of my older videos, how about the one that's been floating around on the screen for the last few seconds?